None of us were competitive. It didn't even occur to us to be competitive.
Just changed my life, and I'm sure so many others.
It never occurred to me not to. We contributed to culture. Yay, Baltimore Club.
Hey there, it's me, Roxy Cottontail. You might know me as a DJ, artist, designer, and New York City party promoter, or from my bunny logo. I'm putting all that on the table and writing about the years that transformed music and the New York City scene. I've interviewed 250 friends and colleagues I admire. I ask all and reveal all. Please join me and the Tales to rediscover the 90s and the Y2K magical landscape of music, art, technology, and streetwear. This is Roxy's Tales.
Hey, girl. Hey. I love being on.
So, why don't you introduce yourself? Who are you?
Me, I don't even know how to introduce myself. Hi, everybody. I'm Katie. Um, this is my dog Meta, named after Metatron's cube, just to get ahead of that one. Um, in the context of this conversation, am a promoter and creative producer and gatherer of misfit humans. Um, Roxy is the queen of clubs. I would say that together we were both the queen of clubs together. Um, yeah, I think I like to, I was a person who sat at this unique center point of like weird business innovation and creativity and all the wild people who wanted to touch that and tried to manifest cool things and community around it.
Kicking off Women's Month on Roxy's Tales is one of my dearest co-collaborators, Katie Longmyer, aka Good Peoples. Her contribution to the underground, championing prolific artists and DJs, led us to co-producing some legendary and epic events that brought together so many dynamics within music, culture, and community. We are blessed to have met and share the same exact batshit passion for event production, the DMV, epic music, the sorcery of divine feminine energy, and we're both Queen of Clubs. Without further ado, Katie Good Peoples Longmyer. Do you remember how we met?
Yes. I'll never forget. It's like I could almost close my eyes and place myself there. It was my first party I threw in New York. It was at Tribeca Cinemas. I was throwing a party for Beautiful Decay magazine, and we were basically trying to recreate the contents of the magazine inside the club. So it had two theaters, it had two different rooms for, you know, activations and DJs and things like that. And because they had such a following, there was like a line around the block because of what we had made and created. We had collaborated with all of these people, and you showed up and you walked to the front of the line and you were like, "Hi, I'm Roxy." Like, basically, like, who are you? And I was so stoked when you were there because to me it meant like I made it.
Oh,
Because I was going to your parties at the time and I knew who you were, and I really, I was like loving the culture, and I just moved to New York, and it was kind of my first foray into that space. And so, you kind of solidified to me that it was real. And then I had already been going to Sway Mondays, but I think after that I bothered you every week, and now you're stuck with me for life.
I mean, you also, I recall the Tribeca Cinemas event too. And I remember, I think soon after that, you booked me here, this at Element.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's another beautiful decay party. So they
Yeah.
threw a party every quarter because that they would drop the magazine every quarter, and like the goal was for the contents of the party creatively to try to showcase like what they were talking about in the magazine. So
So
look at
cool.
that lineup.
Yes.
Oof,
Yeah, it's good. This was 2007.
love that. I think it was really interesting because it was just, this is something that you and I did really well is clash worlds. So, Scope Art Fair came into town, and in my head at the time, I was like, oh, the snotty uppity art people who are international are here. And we threw like a grimy rave, and we were somehow landed. This was one of two parties, but this was an official Scope party. So
Yeah.
like so many people from Scope came to this party, and then they were basically like in the club with downtown. But I
Yeah.
mean, that was the thing that made it so iconic is that everybody would leave the party and just say, wait, what happened? And to this day, people talk about those parties
Yeah.
because something, there's that little special magic that happens.
the events that you started to throw, I guess it was with Beautiful Decay first, was like your first events producing for them?
Yeah, shout out to Fubs. He put me on. I was throwing parties in DC when I lived there before I came up. I was a Fever Buzz promoter, but when I got to New York and I was hanging out with him, and he had been throwing parties with Synapse, and they wanted to like scale them up, and I basically like only knew how to do the most, and so I was like, well, why don't we just do this just 'cause? And he, oh, there we are. Oh, I love that picture of us. Sway
I
Mondays.
know.
But yeah, to his credit, he gave me a shot and put his brand and email list behind me. And then because of that, I got a name. The name Good Peoples came because of that very first Beautiful Decay party where I met you. And someone said, well, you have to put your name on the flyer. And I said, I don't know what to put on here. And they said, well, every time I hang out with you, there are always good peoples at your table. Let's just call it that and make a logo and slap it on. And that's how that happened. It happened just
Oh,
like,
wow. I don't think
and
I
that
knew
that
that.
table that they were talking about was at Sway, for the record. It was that back table at Sway, that back room.
Oh my
Me and Seth, I
gosh.
used to walk in and make a beeline straight back to the very back room and that back table along the wall. And Seth Zappa would be sitting there rolling up.
So when did you start coming to Sway on Mondays?
Probably 2004.
That's when it started.
It was like right at the transition from Retail Mafia to Sway Mondays. Is that what
Mhm.
2004?
Yeah, it's still a little bit of 2005 probably then, because
Yeah, it was like
I
that transition time.
yeah, I think the even the 1 year anniversary had Green Lantern and DJL.
I remember that.
That was still Retail Mafia Presents.
Okay. So yeah, it
So
was that transition to the Roxy domination to turn over downtown nightlife, which, you know, was amazing.
yeah,
Uh, great baton pass there. And I went once and was a regular
yes,
forevermore.
you were.
hmm Texas, I love you, Texas.
I know.
He is such an incredible photographer. I met the first time I met Texas was outside Studio B, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And
Yes, we will.
um he literally was just sitting outside the club on the ground, and I walked up and he introduced himself and said, I want to take pictures at your party.
Look at
Me in
that.
a color is a very rare, this is how you can date, aside from the way I look. You can date me by my hairstyle and color and the fact that I'm actually wearing a color because I think I transitioned all black by like 2007. So
Yeah,
look at us.
I know. We're so cute. Oh my gosh. So tell me about Sway and becoming a regular there. And then, us becoming friends was so impactful for me, having kind of both you and Jules in my corner, but I think you and I did a lot more events after this together that
So many.
just changed my life and I'm sure so many others.
And
And
mine. Yeah.
the amount of people that we brought together. So,
Their careers and marriages and babies, and it's amazing how much a nightclub at that time was a place for community and for creating. I think it's changed over time, and I actually think it's been a circle. I think it's full circle. I think it's back to that vibe now. When I go out in New York, I feel that energy with like the kids. I can call them kids now. So many friendships and relationships were born there. Dusler Rock, who did art for both of us, happened there. Um, Businesses and collaborations started. That's where I got the Beautiful Decay parties, was through pubs and sitting in that club all night, listening to dope music, looking at a dope party and deciding what you wanted to make. And then you'd look around the table and be like, we're gonna make something dope. Who wants in?
who wants in?
I think the thing that I really liked is it kept your edge. All the new artists would come through Sway. So I always felt like I was ahead of the game
Yeah.
too. You'd hear the music first and most of the time meet the artist first. And 8 hours in a nightclub, 5 hours in a nightclub with a bunch of people who are like you can change your life. And think about doing that every week for years
Yes.
and years and years.
Oh my God. Well, Mondays at Sway went from 2005 to 2011. No,
Wow.
2004. Sorry, to 2011.
And I was there for almost, if I was in town, I was there.
7
So
years. It's
good
crazy.
for us.
Yeah. It was a
And yeah, I
lot.
mean, like, Girl power. I hate to call it that, but there were not a lot of women leaders in nightlife. I think Suzanne Barsh probably paved a way for women like us.
So you mentioned Warner Brother Records. You were
Right.
working there. When did you start working at
Yes.
Warner?
By the time I was there with you, we were in 2005, 6, and I was a brand manager. I was a brand partnerships manager, and one of my jobs was to like integrate sort of like downtown culture was coming into mass culture, is coming into the cultural commons. It was not underground anymore. People understood that our community was a community of makers and cultural creators, and things were trickling up to the mainstream. And so one of the big parts of my job was to like match the two up and make sure our talent was in those spaces. And so we threw a crime mob release party that was, nuck if you buck for real.
Yes. Mass Appeal issue number 44 release, Crime Mob album release party. So it's Mass Appeal and Crime Mob. DJ Caramel, Clever. You
It's a
can't see it
great
here.
party. I would go to that
And
party now. They were hanging from the chandeliers and they took the whole back room and turned it into a sound stage so that we like really loaded it in and then it was so packed because we had taken that back room away and it was just I mean, I think that it really was huge for them too. It was like a defining moment where I think they really crossed over to a new audience at that party. I'd like to think that Sway and the parties we threw and the lineups that we curated sort of set the tone for all of the kids who came after us who are making things, including like their music sounds mashed up, their clothing is matched up, their identities are all mashed up. Like, and I think that a lot of that came from us weed whacking our way through just being like, fuck you, I can put like punk rock and rap in the same place. I mean, that's not that innovative at that time, but you know what I mean? Like it was just sort of we did it, we unapologetically did it because it was what we were listening to and what we wanted to be doing.
so, but I also wanted to talk about, so like Sway, I don't know how many people I squeezed in there every goddamn week, but you became one of my hosts pretty regularly. And then at some point, we were like, let's throw a bigger party. Do you remember this?
I'm like, which one? I mean, so Pussy Party?
Yes.
I mean, you know what? That takes me back to you, me and Jules. I think there were so, us and Claw, I think Claw deserves a shout out here too. There were just like very few women doing their thing. And the ones of us who were doing it were hustling and grinding, but it was always collaborative. One of the things I always tell people about that time is it never occurred to me, and I guess I can speak for all of us because we're all still friends and all still doing it. None of us were competitive. It didn't even occur to us to be competitive. If someone was doing something, they called everybody else and invited them in, and we all just threw down. So everything we did felt so impactful because, like four people deep with their own followings throwing down and doing, like, look at this lineup. Like, it's
It's
insane.
insane.
I
This,
mean, celebration of Baltimore Club for life.
yeah. Also, we have Telfar and Tigga Kalor hosting
Mhm.
alongside you and I.
As it should be. I
And the
have a
master of
Our vibe collection
ceremonies
now.
is Ronnie Darko, whose alter ego was Holiday Thug,
Yes.
with Scotty B, Nick Ketchstubs, Ellie Escobar, Dave Nada, Tamil, and very special guest. Do you know who the very special guest was? Do you remember? I do.
I don't
I
remember.
have the photos. That's why I know, but
Tell me.
it was Diplo.
Oh, I remember that one.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
had a fun time. I was really harsh at the door at that party.
I kind of remember you being harsh at the
Yeah, I
door.
was very harsh at that door. I mean, I think that a door person is the gatekeeper of the vibe. And, at that time, there were definitely like like camps and opinions and feelings about all kinds of things. And, being
Yeah.
the door person, you preserve those things. But
This
wow.
is yeah, this is the DJ booth. Look at this.
Wow. Scotty B, that's my club
I
dad.
know.
Scotty B's my club dad. Next to Diplo, oh my God.
I know, it's amazing.
Dave Nada's up in there. That's an incredible party.
It
I
was
mean, the thing that I
incredible.
love about this is like we grew up, I was a Fever promoter when I was like in high school still. So I grew up listening to Baltimore Club and thinking it was global and not knowing how local it was. And then, they both recently gave us certificates. I think I still, yeah, I think,
Yes.
wait, mine's right here. Is this it? Wait, let's
Mine's
see.
on the
Yeah,
wall.
the mayor's office awarded us. So this
For
is
our
from the
contribution.
for our contribution to
Club
bringing
music.
Baltimore Club to the world. So here's the
Yay!
certificate
Wait, should I
of
go get mine?
recognition. Yeah. So let's see. It says, in recognition of your role in the creation and development of Baltimore Club music, they launched Baltimore Club Day. So here we are. We contributed to culture. Yay, Baltimore Club. And it was at parties like that.
Yeah, it was.
Look at all those men in the DJ booth, hosted by women, paid by women, booked by women.
Girl, preach.
But I loved it and they loved it and they treated us all
Yeah.
wonderfully and supported us as much as we supported them. But I'm also really proud of us that we were doing that so early. We were so young when we were doing that.
No, here's another one. Look at this lineup. Got another.
I love this one. This was like the mashup party. Look, the Bangers and JCO, both iconic for their mashups. JCO's like doing his thing, super famous now. We love that
I
for him.
know.
Team Facelift Live, RIP same. I mean, this was what CMJ it had to be. We just did the most all the time, so unapologetically. And when I think back at that time, it never occurred to me not to. And I think that's part of what made it so successful. That's like what made it cut through is we just did the most and put it in your face. And then when you came, you had the best time.
Wait, here's another one. We did four of these apparently.
I thought we did more than that, but I'm here. Yeah. Oh my God, look at that one. That would have been so good. Pace Rock, I love you.
I
Please
know.
rap forever. And DJ L went so hard. Gotta give it up to Pace. Always doing the culturally relevant, wild shit. And one of my favorite rappers,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
And
And
Naeem and
yeah.
Amanda. I mean, I guess, I loved all my friends. I loved everybody. Still do. But
Yeah.
this is what I'm saying is just like, we gave no fucks. We just
No.
did it. And we did it so hard and so good. And I'm
I'm like,
so
it
glad
needs
we
to have a
did.
baby rat on it. Like, what? So I pretty sure we then Studio B opened.
And everybody's life changed. Oh, those Rock flyers are the best. Fun was my one of my favorite parties, long running parties that we did. I mean, all of it was like all of them. But I think Fun and Pussy Party were two parties that I think you and I did together so many times that I just really loved it. And the thing I loved about Studio B was that they had the budgets and the space to do big DJs and big nights, but they were run by nightlife people.
Yeah.
So Studio B, well, Studio A was in Miami. They
Oh,
brought this sound system. They closed it. They brought the sound system up and made Studio B in Greenpoint. And that's where I met Texas. And, look at this lineup. You used to be able to move through that club. I love the way you could move through that club. If you were a club kid and they understood you were a club kid, you walked through the door. You could come with anybody. You always had drinks. You could go into any room. The dance floor was like, there was always a space, a place to sit, a place to dance, a place to drink, a place to party.
I
And
know.
they really backed our like big dreams when you're like, if they're like, if any, I think Chris Love was booking there with Justine. And so they would be like, who do you want to book? And we could come up with big names. And I love that that was your first big room because that club was beautiful.
Best. So Miami Winter Music Conference. Let's take it there for a little bit. I was going to ask you like what songs really like kind of personify this era for you. And for me,
Um,
driving around Miami in this convertible, I
the
wish
Lacoste convertible, we doing the most. I think we literally drove up and down like South Beach just to drive around in that car and play music really loud. But I mean, when I think about songs and I think about that trip, one of my favorite songs of all time, Masters at Work, Deep Inside. There was a raw, extended, deep cut of that track that I still am obsessed with. And I think I made you play it on repeat that whole trip. Like I was like, but let's just play it one more time. I still play it on repeat. It will forever be there. And I mean, it's still obviously an iconic song. If, Kanye sampled it, it's like, it's still, talk about things pushing themselves into cultural commons. Like that song has, lasted 25 years plus. That, and then there was that Mape song,
Oh, yes. So were you, I know you were on the holler board.
of course.
Got to talk about the holler board. Um, what other like blogs do you remember? Any significant forums?
I mean, I was a Holabird girly. John Doe was my favorite place. Thanks for that. Um, I think, that was a big place where I found my people up and down the East Coast because, I'd come from DC and then I landed in New York and then I realized that the Hollowbird was in Philly and that everybody was speaking up and down the East Coast and all over. Like that's where, I mean, I think Chuck English was on there. You were on there. Like there were just so many people who were on there who were talking about stuff. I remember when Fool's Gold got announced that they were happening, like Catch Stubs,
Oh,
I think, made a
wow.
post on the holler board saying the three of us are going to do this thing. And they announced it other places too, I think that same day or late, like maybe the next day, but it was the holler board first. I think it's also worth saying that there was this like competitiveness at the time, which I think has now come together with Ed Banger and the French Touch disco DJs and our crew.
Mhm.
And it was basically like New York and France were holding a lot of the dance music
Yeah.
culture and songs that were coming out at the time. And I mean, London had its own sound, but it was very, the London Manchester vibe was just different. And so I think there was a little competitiveness between the two. And like, look at everybody now, it's all kind of merged together. And you can see like, like A-Track and Mehdi, I think were the ones who brought it together and then played together. And Ed Banger obviously skyrocketed and Daft Punk is iconic to everybody. And back then they were a bunch of dudes who would like we would take out after the club.
How did you and Jen start promoting together?
Jen was throwing parties. Jen worked with Serge a lot. She and Serge stood up Volume in Brooklyn, which was like a art
Yes.
installation rave space, basically. And I had been watching and respecting what she was doing so much. And again, similar to us, like another woman who was like killing it. And I loved her curation and I loved her parties. And ultimately, what happened is I was dating a client and they wanted me to continue, and our relationship was getting serious. And I said, I can either be your girlfriend or I can be your business partner. You have to pick. And he picked girlfriend, and I picked Jen to replace me. And in that baton pass, she and I realized, I mean, for the record, I'm very close with both of them still to this day. But in that baton pass is when she and I basically threw a party together, but mostly is the like, let's do this together so we can navigate this situation and then you're going to take it from here. And then she and I continued to throw parties together to the point where, we became a very well-known nightlife team and nightlife and hospitality team. So she was very well known and still is as having an incredible curatorial ear and really putting emerging artists on stage with big artists. And she also introduced me to Serge Becker, and Serge gave us all so many opportunities with all of the spaces he was going in. And I was more known as the community gatherer and the creative, like the front of house creative person and the community connector. And so combined, Jen and I were a great team to go into clubs, and she would do the booking and I would do the sort of packaging and the marketing. And we threw a warehouse party where we served pot brownies called Lose Your Shit. Shouts to Jenny Gottstein, who was part of that. And then
That
we
the ones that in Chinatown was Lose Your
no,
Shit?
those, so there were, that was 88 Palace. So many people say, once I went to a rave in a dim sum restaurant, and I was like, that was me. It was good. Your party was good if it removes itself from you so many degrees that people tell you about the party and you have no idea that it was like cultivated by you. But like, yeah, like we went and made friends with the owner of that restaurant. Still to this day, there are parties in that space. Jen did one a couple weeks ago, and um we walked in for dim sum and there was a wedding and we kind of realized that like it had all of the makings of a club if you just move the tables, and he was so down. He was so down. And so that was the second longest running party I ever threw in New York. I think we did it for almost 5 years. It was called Flashing Lights first, and it was with Ayers and Jubilee and Nick Catch Stubbs, and the three of them were Flashing Lights, and we were like their promotion partner. And then they wanted to stop doing that party, and we kept the party going, and we renamed it Dark Disco. And Diplo played there. Kalela debuted there. I mean, every iconic DJ who wanted a big room and would get paid, thousands and thousands of dollars for big rooms that would never play like a DIY party would beg to play there. And
Yeah.
so Flosstradamus played there. Like we had people who really missed, they were nightlife people. They were club kids who had grown up in warehouses and they wanted those plays. And that's what that was. And it was so incredible.
I don't know what year this was, but I felt like it was maybe like the first time I was hearing dubstep in the club.
Yeah, I mean, I was such a jungle baby, so dubstep was I was always into that like UK grime and dubstep and jungle, but yeah, I think we were there. Weren't you were performing, you were DJing,
I
and
DJ'd this?
not there. That was
Oh,
A-side and Kish's party, Plastic People.
yes.
And it was probably one of my most memorable. It was one of the best parties I've ever been to in London at that time. And they were like running London. They were like the us of London. And so we like went to the party that was like our party. And then there was Will, Gaslamp Killer was there and DJing. And I remember it was a lock-in and they told us after. So we were like downstairs partying and they were like, it's a lock-in. And we were like, what? And then they locked the door and we were like, wait, what? And then we were like in this club all night long. But it was a great party.
I know that you've like been in and out of like you did the major label thing. You were independent. I mean, Good Peoples became a company.
I think the thing that was so interesting about that time was I didn't know what I was doing and
None of
I
us.
just figured it out. I would ask someone for a copy of a thing they did, or I would like bring something home from work and replicate it and act like that was, it was just like act as if kind of thing. I know that that's like a whole founder mentality or whatever, but that word wasn't a buzzword when we were doing what we were doing. We were just we were like, I think we were just creating because we didn't know what else to do. There was no other way. There was just, we were expressing, we were existing in the spaces we wanted to be in didn't exist, and we made them and we filled them with all these people. And, it meant so much to me. And I took it so seriously that like we were a safe space, for all different kinds of misfit people. Like they pick a misfit and they could all be in the same room. And there was no, you couldn't buy a bottle to get into the club with us
Yeah.
couldn't. You had to, you couldn't buy your way in. And someone who, like, there were kids who would be like, didn't have a place to stay, and they would come and I'd give them a job as like, oh, look at us.
I
But like,
know.
I'd give them a coat check job for the night, or I'd just let them come in for free and hang out so they weren't on the streets, and they would make the party better. And they were
Yeah.
great people. And, Good People's was my creative outlet. Ultimately, I think it made me a really unique creative or creative producer or creative executor at the business level. But that party was a 10-year long party.
Wow.
I think Andre Balaz owned and ran the Standard at the time, and he had Stefan, who deserves like the biggest shout out ever, placed inside to make sure the integrity of nightlife and music were managed in that space. Similar to Studio B, it was, you know, people who had created a foundation of nightlife in New York and other places, and they maintained it. It was so
Oh,
tightly
yeah.
curated musically, and I think there were only a couple promoters who were in there. Suzanne Barsh was in there. We were in there, but like there were very, very few people who like I took it really like as the biggest compliment that we were allowed to be there as a regular party. And they were our true partners. They put money behind that party. They amplified that party and they made sure like so many things happened on that party, similar to 88 Palace. This party, if you talk to someone who's been to New York and they were visiting and they go out, they'd be like, I was on the roof of the Standard once. Or I'll meet someone who you meet so many people in nightlife, like volumes of people. And I'm always so stoked. I want to meet your friend. I want to meet your girlfriend. I want to meet your husband. I want to meet your side bitch, whatever. And I would be like, hey, 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 hey. And like 5 years later, 10 years later, someone will say, I met you on the roof of the Standard. I would argue that there is a dotted line connection from the Standard roof to APT, which was originally around the corner. And when I first started going to New York, it was a foundation of like good music and good people and good nightlife culture that Stefan also had a hand in
Yeah.
that uh, kept on going. Like, let's just talk about this whole ecosystem of people. Richard, the ultimate door guy who should be at every door forever, artist first, door guy second, ultimate curator of like speaking of managing the vibe.
Word.
Like he really knows how to do that. And he did iconic parties before any party I ever touched. and he was always at the door of the Standard, and he also was at the door of Sub Mercer. So you'd walk up, and he'd be just so beautifully standing there casually, like as if he was just hanging out. He's so perfect. And then if you got past Richard, which to me, people would be like, I can't get in, and I was like, sucks for you. Richard's in charge. But you would go in, and you'd open the door, and you get into a freight elevator, and it would take you to the basement, and you would walk through. Um, it was like a catacombs kind of vibe of brick arched ceilings, really low, and you were walking through the liquor cabinet of the Mercer kitchen.
So
And
cool.
at the end of it was a red door with an M with little parentheses like Sub Mercer. And you opened it, and it was, I think, because of the brick, and they had this beautiful analog sound system that like the way the music like hit the walls and filled the
Yes.
space were just gorgeous and beautiful. And all of Andre Balazs's hotels have a custom cocktail called the BC Clet, which I used to always order. It's off menu, so it's like if you're an Andre Balazs person, you know to order that drink, and like every bartender knows to make it. And that was my first weekly in New York. That was the first time I got written up. I got written up by Black Book because of the party I threw there. Let's Play House was born. That label was born out of that club. I met Gabby in that club, and now Gabriella is named after that club. And all of that still tracks back to the Standard and to APT. And I think that's just important.
Yeah. Like at the time, we didn't realize what we were experiencing, I don't think.
Idea.
And to be a part of that was so special.
I think back to a lot of stuff we were part of that felt really special that we were just creating and existing. So there's Morrissey Park, which
Mhm.
was like a teeny tiny little bar in the East Village, but it was filled with creators who now are literally they're the creative directors of every brand that everybody's touching, or they're making the music of every brand. I met Scott Tepper there. Now he's at Huff. You know, Dust LaRock was there. The motherfucker parties, like every single 3-day weekend. Like I think that was one of my first exposures to like real full 360 nightlife community where like the queer community was coming together, the rock community was coming together, a dance community, and we would just like mob into those parties. And I know those were such a huge part of your life. And Justine D on the cover of magazine, it made me feel like she like made it for all of us. All of those clubs, like even sixes and eights to 205, and like rapping it like it was like Surge rapping 205 like it was Factory, like there were nods to what we were doing inside of the clubs that I think really created something so unique and special. It was just there was so much creation happening, and there was so much collaboration happening. And I think a reason a lot of the people are successful is because of how collaborative it is. And now when the world looks really, really different, I think that, like I said, everything's going full circle. When I go back to New York, everyone's back in Bushwick, back at the warehouse. People are back to making things. There's so much more art in the club and music in the club, and way less of this, like, you can go to a bottle service club if you want to, but like, there's a time and
Yeah.
place for everything. But I think, now is the time where knowing what the person next to you is doing is important and valuable and is going to like save everybody. And so to me, that means that everyone should be in the club. Someone walks into a nightclub and they're there for a reason. They're there to dance, or they're there to love, or they're there to fuck, or they're there to drink, or they're, whatever, that let loose, whatever. And like you can't you can't like let go of that when you walk. If you're holding that space every night and you see people in that space every night, there's a raw human aspect to what makes human beings beautiful, that I think make the people in this community and the creators in this community make things like it's why what they make is special.
Yes.
I'm
Amazing.
so grateful. Nightlife saved my life.
I know. Me too, girl. Me too. And one of my things too, I remember like soon after befriending each other and you put me on the list for something or you booked me for that beautiful DK party or you asked me to put you on the list for something and you were like, I will like look at the Warner catalog and you can have whatever you want. Do you remember writing me this?
Yeah, probably.
Um,
I loved sending people records.
yes. And I feel like I asked you for the Killers, maybe.
I'm sure. That sounds right.
That sounds right. You also gave me this shirt.
Mike Jones. 2308004.
You
I was on
right?
tour with him. I was on tour with him. It was such a wild ride. Those guys were all so kind to me. They treated me like I was like their little sister, but I brought all that stuff back down into downtown and like as was part of my job, right? So like I was going on dub tour, which arguably was like car culture and that type of thing. They were going into the communities that already knew about that. But there was a crossover, to the credit of Paul Wall and Mike Jones. They cut through. And that song is burned into I think everybody knows that phone number.
Yeah.
You've got an edge and you push new things and new ideas in a way that make it digestible and fun for other people. So like you're willing to take the heat. That's why you get what you do, because the heat doesn't keep you from doing it. And then you do it, and everybody doesn't want to miss it. They might try to push back on you, but they'll still show up to the party. And that's when you know
Yeah.
you did it. And then they leave loving it.
Yeah. That was also another thing when I booked Andre Nicotina at
I
Joe's.
remember that. That flyer,
And
the Dust Rock flyer that I loved. I remember that flyer.
yes, that one sits right here. And he and I got into like, we fought about whether it should be a blunt or a cigarette for about, I don't know, a week or so. It's genius.
I mean, you gotta love Duster for arguing about the most minutia of creative points to the point where
Yeah.
he would like be on 1,000 and fight with you about it.
Uh-huh. I know. It's so good.
I think it's a testament to how we moved. We took big swings and we landed them. We weren't afraid to take risks. We did it together. Um,
Oh yeah.
and look at what happened. You know,
But
look at the guys. I look at Chromeo. I look at E-Track. I look at Wes. I think it still influences everything we still do because I know you have Dom Records, and I'm extra stoked for that because of this, because of the way you've curated music and because of the way you put artists on and um anybody you collaborate with is gonna do something different in the way I like. And obviously I like the name of Dom Records and I like the course and I'm just
yeah,
excited. I'm excited for what's next. And I don't know about you, I'm craving what's next. I'm craving that creativity. I'm craving that innovation. And I think that if the world is going to be the way it is right now, especially in the United States, I can't think of anything better than turning the fucking volume up at the club, literally and figuratively.
you
I love
inspire
seeing
me so much.
Oh my God, you inspire me so much. I mean, like, I'm gonna cling to this one for life. I told you, you're stuck with me for life.
I love you. Thank you, Katie.
You, mwah, mwah, mwah.
Thanks for hopping by. That's it for this week. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, comment, and stalk. Bounce, little kitty.